So, okay, then let's start the last session. And our speaker is Tharun. And Tharun is from Texas A&M University, and he is in his early stage of his PhD. So, he will talk about non-perturbative approach to heavy flavor transport in nuclear collision. So, over to you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for having this, giving me this opportunity to attend this school and give me this talk, and also use this as an excuse to visit India in the middle of a semester. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about this non-perturbative approach to heavy flavor transport that we had developed. So this was a multi-ingredient transport developed. So all these different ingredients were like initially developed by different people. Ralph Rapp's my advisor, and Dr. Stefan Bass, and we finally put this together with this recent collaboration by the US Department of Energy that started during 2023. So let me quickly show what's the outline of my talk. So I just have a simple motivation. I don't think I need to spend too much time on this because this entire school has been about why we study heavy quarks and jets. And I'll just, do a simple overview of our transport approach and the three main ingredients that go into it. One is mainly how we calculate our transport coefficients. It's calculated using the T matrix formalism, and it's constrained using lattice data. And then how those transport coefficients go into our heavy quark transport formalism, and how we finally do our hadronization for the heavy quarks. This is my main contribution to the model, but I will be going through the other parts as well. And then finally, we have some data and theory comparisons for lead-lead and gold-gold. So quickly, the motivation. We've all been seeing this for the past 1.5 weeks. Heavy quarks sort of are produced quite early in the before QGP is even formed. So they survive pretty much the entire time until they finally hadronize. So they're going to carry the full medium, full memory of the medium evolution. So they are perfect probes to study how the in-medium interaction takes place. But this entire approach has multiple different components that are used to explain different aspects. Like the bulk evolution is usually done using a viscous hydrodynamics, while the heavy quark is well described using a Langevin approach. Dr. Das talked about it in the last week. So all of these indicate quite a strongly coupled medium. So we have all non-perturbative effects coming in. And finally, we obviously do not observe quarks, we only observe hadrons. So we need to model that as well. So we need a sort of multi-ingredient approach with non-perturbative inputs to model this entire transport. So that is sort of going to be the main motivation. And our main, so these are our broad ingredients that we put into our model. So for first is the heavy quark production that is taken care of by perturbative QCD. We use the Fonel calculations, that it's quite a standard one. And we put in some NPDF modifications to just take care of the shadowing for charm quark production or heavy quark production. And then we have one of the main ingredients to our transport, which is the medium interaction, which comes in through the transport coefficients, encodes the elastic scattering of the heavy quark in the medium. And these are calculated using what we call the T matrix approach. I'll elaborate on that. And for that, we have sort of two different scenarios in there. And again, I'll elaborate on that. And once we have the transport coefficients, we feed it into our transport, which is just a diffusion plus radiative transport. And then this is done in a 2+1D hydrodynamic framework. It's called Vishnu. And then we finally do hadronization through a fragmentation plus recombination approach. We also, in principle, have like hadronic rescattering, where post chemical freeze out, all the hadrons undergo rescattering. But currently, I'm not going to show any results because we're still fully tuning that. But I will primarily be talking about these three, because these three are sort of the most important inputs to our transport. So let me first go to the transport coefficients. Okay, so the transport coefficients basically encode how the heavy quark and the light parton from the medium are going to interact. And we use this formalism called the T matrix formalism. What this basically does, so this T is sort of this non-perturbative kernel. And what this basically does is it resums infinite like series of gluon exchanges, ladder diagrams. And by doing that, we sort of encode all the non-perturbative effects in there. This doesn't take into account other gluon exchanges, but since we do an infinite sum, the non-perturbative part goes in there. And if you see the sort of a very schematic formula of it, it looks quite similar to like a Dyson-Schwinger or a Lippmann-Schwinger equation. We have the Green's function in there. And so this is just a Green's function propagator with a small self-energy term. So this self-energy term is actually dependent on the T matrix itself, plus the this F here, which basically tells us about all the partons in the medium. So this is also a many-body approach. So all the many-body effects have been effectively put into this. And we just solve this self-consistently until it converges to get the T matrix. And once we have the T matrix, we can plug it in and calculate our friction coefficients. And one more thing is that we also use the T matrix to calculate spectral functions for the partons involved. And that is also folded into this. So we have some quantum effects encoded into the friction coefficients as well. And we initially, this T matrix starts off as a 4D one. And for heavy quarks, we basically make this assumption that the energy transfer is sort of small. So we reduce it to a beta like from a 4D to a 3D equation. And that has an input potential, which is what we will be inputting to this entire formalism. That's what I'll talk about in the next slide. And just a thing, the input potential has sort of different contributions. One has like a vector sort of structure and a scalar structure and some spin-dependent terms. I'm not going to go into that, but these two will be important when I actually discuss the potential. Yeah, so once we have this, we now go to the potential. So the potential, like we've seen in a lot of talks before, is going to consist of two sort of terms, one color coulomb, the perturbative contribution, and the string term, which is the non-perturbative one. And in vacuum, these we use the T matrix to reproduce quark-quantium spectroscopy. And that's how these are set, quite close to standard values that others do. And then in medium, we do the modifications with the Debye masses and a extra string breaking term, CB here, that just quickly breaks the string in the medium, the string term. And if you see, if you put this to 0, we recover the vacuum limit. And these two are the ones that are going to be constrained using calculations from lattice.
Of the string breaking term,
yeah.
The second term, it's strictly up to a quadratic term, or there are scopes of higher?
Yeah, there could definitely be scopes, but for now we just kept it. Yeah, we just expanded it and kept one term there. No, they are related. They are definitely related. I didn't put it in here, but they're related. Yeah. So again, so this is where the sort of constraints from.
What is this chi and why is it?
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have sort of two constraints from lattice. So first is what we call the scenario, this vector confinement scenario. So if in the last slide I showed this, this input potential has like a vector term with a vector structure and a term with a scalar structure. So if we look at this here, so this is what we Lorentz transform this and put it into the momentum dependent potential. The color Coulomb one is sort of considered to have generally is considered to have a vector structure because this is similar to what we have in QED. And the confining term considered sort of have a scalar structure, but what was found is that if we include some of the confining terms contribution to the vector structure in our potential, and that's where we introduce this mixing parameter, we find that it improves the vacuum spin splittings in for quarkonium. So this is still a vacuum vacuum effect. So that's why it's the 40%. It's called the vector confinement potential, where the confining potential has like a vector nature to it, you could say.
So it's just mimicking the spin interaction.
No, there is a spin-spin interaction also in there, but when like one of my seniors and my advisor found that this was sort of needed to get the spin-spin splittings exactly in vacuum for quarkonia. Yeah, the spin-spin splittings are there. I just did not show it here. Yeah, it was just found that the physics is that the confining term has a vector sort of. Yeah. I don't know if it's double counting. I'm not sure of that. Maybe. Yeah, I am unsure if it is double counting, but I will get back to you on that because, yeah, so I did not directly work on this, but maybe the details I might not know, but yeah, we can have a discussion about that for sure. So yeah, this they found that the vacuum this helped like with the vacuum spin splittings in quarkonia, and then we take the free energies from the in medium to constrain the potential in medium. So this is one scenario. The other scenario is what we call the Wilson line correlator scenario. What we do is we take the same vacuum structure, but we reduce this mixing a little, so only 20% of the confining term contributes to the vector structure. So I tried to find out why they did it. I still haven't gotten an answer from this guy, but maybe when I get an answer, I'll try to let you know. But and then the difference between this and this is that now they use the Wilson line correlator. You have heard a lot from it to constrain the in-medium potential. And my understanding is that the Wilson line correlators are the static Wilson line correlators are a better constraint because one can actually extract the free energy from the Wilson line correlator. Lattice, I mean, I'm not a lattice, but maybe someone else can like elaborate on that. But my understanding is that the Wilson line correlators function as a better constraint for our potential because the free energy. So if you just plug in, if you calculate the Wilson line correlator at a given Euclidean time, which is 1/t, we sort of basically get the free energy. We have to take some log. So the point is that the Wilson line correlators has the free energy information in there, plus more dynamics. So yeah. Yes.
But this relation doesn't hold when tau equal to t. Is hold only in the open interval from 0 to 0.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. So just, yeah, okay, I'll correct that, yeah. So yeah, so using these two scenarios, we constrain our in-medium potential, and then we calculate our friction coefficients and spatial diffusion coefficient. So yeah, so we have the two input potentials for our AFP. So we have what sort of the vector confinement sort of has a harder momentum dependence. And this comes in because we have this extra vector contribution into our the confining term. So that has a sort of stronger momentum dependence. So that's why we get a pretty hard momentum dependence. And it also, if we just compare with calculate the spatial diffusion coefficient and compare it with lattice calculation, we do find it agrees better with the lattice, even though the Wilson line correlator is considered to be like a sort of better theoretical constraint. Also, the Wilson line correlators do have like a softer momentum dependence. That's because we reduced the sort of vector component. And they also found that it has sort of a weaker temperature dependence because the screening, when they calculated, was actually quite low. So the screening dependence was quite low, so the temperature dependence was also found to be weak. We have some ideas as to how we can improve this Wilson line correlator, but currently we are not. Currently, this talk is not about this is about whole transport. So we can have a discussion about that. But the takeaway is that the vector confinement does tend to agree better with the data, better with the lattice QCD data. So now that we have the transport coefficients in hand, we want to do the
You said that this weaker dependence and lower screening, but you have seen in the earlier talk that is QCD data is also consistent with more screening. So what is your take on that?
I don't know. We should probably discuss. I do not know why that comes in. Yeah. I mean, this entire thing, lattice, we just use this as a approach to calculate A of P. So to the extent that my understanding of lattice is concerned is always in context with this. So maybe you can try to explain to me why that's the case. We can have a discussion about it. So so this was actually the solid ones are sort of newer lattice data. And when the time this plot was made, when we published it, it was this lattice data was not published, and basically our lattice colleagues wanted to include this because that was newer. I do not know what the newer ones. Okay, yeah. So we just included because it was just asked by our colleagues to do it. Because at that time it wasn't published yet. So so now we have our transport coefficients. We want to do our actual transport. So for the transport, we have sort of two different contributions. One is the elastic scattering. We heard about that from Dr. Das's lecture. We have the Fokker-Planck with the friction coefficients, and then we do for the Fokker-Planck, we basically do the Langevin, the noise term, and we have the Einstein relations, like fluctuation dissipation theorem included in there. And just want to reiterate the point that the heavy quark is treated as a quasi-particle, but sort of the quantum effects are put in the friction coefficients. And for the radiation, so we basically have so I would like to emphasize that this is still under work. And when we published this, we made sure to introduce very simple radiative processes. There could be, in principle, more radiation contributions, corrections to this, but whatever we have, it works quite well. And I just want to sort of emphasize two effects that we have in our radiation. So you all have heard this medium-induced radiation, that when the heavy quark propagates, when it's getting soft kicks from the medium, it's also going to radiate out gluons. And there are sort of two effects in there. One is where this where the gluons emitted from successive scatterings are completely incoherent, and they're just going to radiate off. And that is, we've heard even in the context of jets, it's that Bethe-Heitler regime where the formation time of the gluon is quite small compared to the mean free path. That just means that different gluons that are emitted between different successive kicks are completely independent because the mean free path is large. And this is given by just this collision rate method, where we just radiate out gluons with this rate, where this is the, I think, the gluon mass. I'll have to double check that. And once, but in the medium, we expect the heavy quarks, when they diffuse, especially lower momentum, to be deeply in the LPM region. What this means is that the gluon formation time is very small, very large compared to the mean free path. So every individual, successive gluons are going to sort of destructively interfere, and that suppresses the amount of radiation we're going to get. So it was a little difficult to implement that in a transport, so we found a heuristic way to do it. What we did was we initially assumed them to be in the Bethe-Heitler regime, radiated out gluons according to this rate, and we let it propagate a little, and we found out that when we find that the mean free path was actually less compared to the gluon formation time, we accept those different gluons with a probability by this. So what this does is, if tau f is much greater, it suppresses the gluon radiation. If we look at the other limit, if tau f is sort of more, this quantity goes to 1, all the gluons are radiated out, thereby mimicking the LPM effect. So so we have sort of radiative and diffusive processes for the heavy quarks, and once that is done, we want to hadronize it. Yes.
Study the relative contribution of radiative channel to the dissipation.
Yeah, so we are going to have a paper about, so we're going to publish the next paper where we discuss all the different contributions. So hopefully.
My sense is that radiative is less important for heavy quark.
Yes. So the main purpose of doing this is to try and understand the transport coefficients and how they are there. But and we are trying to extend our calculation to be as accurate as possible to beyond 10 GeV or so. And there, these radiative processes might have a bigger role to play.
What you're talking about, since you want relatively low electron production and at the scale of temperature or conduct temperature, there are elastic channels.
Yeah, that is true. But yeah.
So you are seeing the variation of the system with time.
Yes.
So how do you change chi in potential with time? Chi. So 1 minus chi, that chi thing.
That mixing parameter?
Yeah.
That's constant. That doesn't change.
But how?
That is constrained in vacuum.
Just in vacuum?
That is completely constrained in vacuum.
Okay.
And then we, once that is done, we do the medium constraining.
Okay.
So chi doesn't change at all. Chi is just like a small mixing parameter that's fixed in vacuum.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so now transport is done. We want to do hadronization. Yeah, so hadronization is done with this recombination plus fragmentation approach. So for the recombination part, basically a heavy quark is going to pick up one light quark from the medium, form a meson or baryon. And we use this model called the resonance recombination model. What this does is it basically treats the d meson or the baryon formed as a resonance. So what we start off with is a Boltzmann equation where we have like a gain term and a loss term. And so this gain term has the sort of relativistic Bright-Wigner cross-section in there. And what we do is, as a sort of like a first order approximation, we set the equilibrium limit. That is why we just set this LHS to 0 and then calculate what is the phase space distribution, meson phase space distribution. And this can be extended to baryons as well. What we do is we do it in 2 steps. First, we form a diquark from 2 light quarks, and then that diquark and the heavy quark will combine to form a baryon. So I've just schematically shown what's the meson and the baryon phase space distribution coming from the underlying quark distributions. So yeah, for the baryons, we'll have 3 quarks and 2 cross sections. And the sort of neat thing about starting off from a Boltzmann equation is that if we just plug in equilibrium phase space distributions to our quarks, we end up getting equilibrium limits for our hadrons. So I've just shown a V2 calculation. All of us have heard of V2, where I calculate my RRM using equilibrium phase space distributions for all the quarks involved, and then I also directly take there's a direct Cooper-Frey calculation for the baryons and d-mesons. So basically, just to illustrate that I can get there is an equilibrium to equilibrium mapping from quarks to hadrons. So the hadronization is there. Now I want to slightly switch gears and talk about the fragmentation part. So for the fragmentation, we use this thing called we use the statistical hadronization approach. And what we first do is perform the fragmentation in this not just this entire setup in proton-proton systems. That will give us some sort of constraints and information that we will feed in when we do our nuclear systems as well. So first is what, again, as I mentioned, we have this input charm quark spectrum that we take from Funnel. It's a perturbative calculation. And we want to hadronize all of this charm quark, the set of charm quarks into d-mesons and baryons. So we need a set of charm hadron states that we want to hadronize to. So for the d-mesons, we take all the mesons that are mentioned in the particle data group. And for the baryons, we take the ones mentioned in the particle data group, and we supplement that with all the charm baryons that are predicted by the relativistic quark model. So there is evidence from lattice that supports this. I think this was shown in Dr. Petrashki's lecture last week, that they basically needed to include this relativistic quark model hadrons into the HRG model to get the right equation of state. So that was sort of the main motivation for this, that we supplemented the particle data group with additional baryons predicted by the relativistic quark model. And then we finally chose a fragmentation function that was calculated from heavy quark effective theory. The neat thing about this fragmentation function is that it scales with the mass of the final hadron, and it has this parameter scaling. And if we increase this parameter, the fragmentation basically makes the final meson, final hadron spectrum softer. So that's what. Yeah.
So when you pick up the application,
Yes.
You may be working in a scale where also soft collinear effective theory can also play a role.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but these two AFTs have different kind of degrees of freedom and matching to play. Right. So, of course, I understand that you plugged from a paper, etc. But if you dive in one step deeper, how will you set up the analysis to determine what is the right kind of fragmentation function to choose?
So what would be the difference between doing this and the soft collinear? Like what would be the contributions coming in from
Yeah,
there?
so in that theory, how you resum the large logs are a bit different.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that given the scale of your problem, the physical system,
Right.
how do you analyze that picking up the results from heavy quark effective theory is the most appropriate thing to do, and not some other scale where skate is also important that is creeping in? Is there a systematic way to do this analysis?
Okay, I do not know the answer to that, but this we did it because we wanted a PP baseline. So we currently have never thought about what these other effects would come into play, because
I mean, numerically, if you can argue that the subtle difference between this kind of effects are much smaller than the amount of numerical precision you want, then it's perfectly fine.
Right.
But then this needs to be analyzed once and needs to be established.
Okay, sure.
Right. Yeah. So that's
okay. Yeah, this we just did it not to get like a. We're not in the business of trying to explain PP data. It's trying to get a PP baseline, which we'll feed into nuclear collision. Yeah.
Yes, but you do explain PP data. It's very interesting. The agreement is very good, but I'm actually a little mystified how you got there. So my first question is the absolute scale. You get there's absolute cross sections in the vertical axis.
Yeah. Okay.
And you get the cross sections.
Yeah.
Essentially perfectly, but then you've got d sigma cc bar by dy without any PT dependence is 1 millibar. So how does this all play together?
Yeah. Okay. So I will admit defeat here. The funnel. So the funnel, the absolute cross. Sorry, the absolute cross section given by funnel is not 1 millimole. We basically had to scale.
So what actually that 1 millibar is PT integrated?
That's PT integrated, yes.
And then is it the PT dependent? Your black dash?
Yes.
That's what you take from phono.
Yes, it's just the PT dependence. As I said, if we were in the trying to fully explain the PP data from scratch, from a full perturbative calculation, we would fail, because we tried this with Pythia as well. Even Pythia, we were I think the recent versions of Pythia have tried to explain the lambda C data, but when we first did this analysis, we could not get the right cross section needed to calculate to fit
So
the
I
PP
understand
data.
the 1.0 millibar is basically a parameter.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my second question is about the relative population. I mean, you get all the data perfectly, in particular the relative population of.
I should say we do not get all the data correctly. I have not given one charm hadron which we very underpredict, which is the cascade Cs.
So I rephrase, you get the data on the plot.
Yes.
Which is already very interesting.
Yeah.
So there's another, and I'm actually a little surprised that you appeal to theory for fragmentation functions. There are measurements of charm quark fragmentation into different charm species. Alice actually has a nice measurement of that. Alice is sufficiently capable that it measures all charm meson and baryon states that basically sum up to the charm cross section. So as many as you need. And from that, you can calculate the relative fraction of charm that goes into D0, goes into D star, goes into lambda C.
Yep.
That's a very interesting result. But on top of that, people have also done that at LEP and at Hera.
Yes.
And what one finds is that the charm fraction going into D0, for instance, is a factor 2 different.
Yep.
Between lepton-induced collisions and proton-proton at the LHC.
Yes.
So the environment, even in proton-proton collisions, plays a crucial role in these kind of lowish PT charm hadronizations.
Yeah.
So it's tricky. So
yeah,
I remain, I mean, they basically go through all the data, but there are these ingredients that are so uncertain. So I'm just wondering how you put all that together.
Yeah. So we we had this discussion when we were trying to fit a similar calculation for RIC. So this multiplicity dependence of the like baryon to meson ratio. What we basically came up with, which I'm not going to go into the talk, but I'll give you the answer, is we introduced one more, again, I understand it's another parameter, but we introduced a baryon suppression parameter that for LHC, which is just one. And when we go to, we tune that in such a way that when we go to RIC energies, the lambda C over D sort of ratio drops by half. And when we try to even like go further, if we, and it can be basically tuned to fit the system that we are trying to do the fragmentation for. Like it can be tuned to reproduce lambda C over D ratio for electron-positron collisions. So that is.
So I'm not quite following. So is that a tunable parameter to get the relative population of lambda C over D?
Yes.
So you basically dial that in to get so each curve has its independent normalization effectively?
No, there's only one normalization.
So I don't want to hog the microphone. We can talk afterwards.
Yes.
I'm still mystified how you get the right lambda C over D ratio here, but let's talk offline.
Yeah, sure. The right lambda C over D ratio comes because of we add all of these states. I have one plot where I don't know if I have it, but yeah, when we take out this, we do not get the right lambda C over D ratio, but yes.
And why do you use this statistical hadronization model here? Because I'm not sure whether charm will thermalize within this time.
Yeah,
especially at Greek energies, I'm not sure.
It absolutely will not thermalize. But we just wanted to find a way to assign different weights to all these different hadron species. That's why we came up with this. But it's not going to thermalize for sure. But as you can see, this explains the data quite like reasonably. And yeah, this was another question that was sort of raised by Dr. Petreschi. But we needed a way to assign some relative weights to all these different hadron species. And this was we found to be the most reasonable way of doing it. I do not know if there are any. If there are any, I would like to know about it. But yes. So yeah, what we do is take the input charm, hadronize it to all these different species, and assign relative thermal weights. And we also have like a strangeness suppression, like canonical strangeness suppression factor, which we have for 0.7. I realize it could be a little high. That's still sort of a like drawback in our model. But yeah, and then once we have all these set of, we have hadronized to all this set of hadron states, we have to decay them to the ground state, which is what we observe. And those branching ratios have been like mostly taken from the PDG. But for the relativistic quark model, we've made some simple ansatz, like trying to conserve the quantum numbers and everything. And you can see here we fit pretty much all the charm hadron species. And we have also done similar fits for at different energies, like higher energies. And we also have done for RIC, but I'm just showing for LHC. So the fragmentation, basically, when we do it in PP, we set the PT spectrum, what and all charm hadrons we want to hadronize to, and then our like branching ratios. So this was constrained in proton-proton, and now we move on to how we combine the two. So what we basically do is when we do the diffusion, we have a set of like an ensemble of charm quarks. Once they reach like a local temperature that's given by hydro at 160 MeV, we mark it for hadronization, we stop the diffusion. And for every single charm hadron, we calculate a recombination probability. This is a self-consistently calculated from the RRM sort of formula that I showed. We calculate a recombination probability for every quark. And what we do is we populate all these heavy quarks into, first we populate one hadron, and this is where the recombination probability comes in. So just 1 minus the recombination probability can be sort of treated as a fragmentation probability or so. So this is where we combine the two. And then we again do it for all the hadrons. And then again, do the strong, feed down the branching ratios to the ground state like we did in PP. So, so I just wanted to show how this recombination probability looks like. So this is just plotted as a function of the charm quark fluid rest frame momentum in the rest frame momentum of the charm quark. And I just wanted to show what is the total meson contribution. And this is the final recombination probability. As you can see, it's normalized to 1 at 0 momentum. It basically just tells us that a charm quark at rest is can only undergo recombination and not fragmentation. Also, doing this charm quark by charm quark conserves sort of the space momentum correlations. What this means is that if we plot a space, a momentum distribution of the charm after diffusion, we see that the charm quark, which is sort of has a higher momentum, is likely to be found in the outer regions of the fireball. So whatever space momentum correlations were present in the charm gets carried over into the D meson as well by doing this quark by quark instead of trying to do this on some space averaged coalescence that others do. So once we do this, we want to show some results. Yeah, so here I have D meson results, which was published last year for the two different potentials that I discussed in the transport coefficient for both central and semi-central, and I have plotted just the V2 and the RAA for that. So yeah, the dotted lines are basically the charm, the underlying charm quantities which we cannot observe, but once we do the hadronization, which is the solid, we see that it has a pretty fair agreement with data. And I just want to point out that the vector confinement scenario, which sort of agreed better with the lattice, also explains the data better than the Wilson line correlator scenario. And we see the same in both central and semi-central. And just want to emphasize that hadronization plays a quite important role because it really augments the V2. So yeah, this is our most recent results for D meson. And I now also want to show that we are capable of calculating the baryon sector as well. So this is not published ALICE data, but it was shown V2 for lambda C. And generally, the V2 for lambda C is slightly more than V2 of the D mesons, and this can be explained by the recombination process because we recombine with two quarks, and that picks up more flow from the medium. That sort of explains the V2 better. And here also we see the vector confinement has a better agreement with data, and same for RAA. We put some branching, we put some bands here because there was some uncertainty that we wanted to capture in the decays from these excited state lambdas, because we could have calculated the exact branchings, but for now we just put a band there to illustrate the differences in the branching, uncertainties in the branching ratios. And we also have some hydrochemistry. So yeah, here I want to show the PP data as well. So that solid, the dashed lines are proton-proton ratios, while the sort of the solid lines are what we get for nuclear collisions. It's not that sensitive to the potential constraint, but we get an enhancement that can be explained with recombination process. So finally, I just want to show some RIC results. These are still preliminary, but here also we see that the vector confinement potential explains the data better for the V2. But to calculate the RAA, we do not have enough information about the total charm quark cross-section that's measured at RIC, because while we have d meson cross-sections, the lambda C is not fully measured down to 0 PT, low PT. So what we did was to assume that this sort of goes down, similar to what we find in the light hadron sector, and that sort of gave us a lambda C over D ratio of 0.5. And with that, and the measured d meson cross-section in gold, we determined a 30% centrality, 30% shadowing for semicentral, and that's how we determine the RA. I want to emphasize that this is not based on any NPDF or like cold nuclear matter effects. This is just a simple extrapolation of the lambda C over D ratio. I would appreciate any feedback from experimentalists whether this this extrapolation down to this 0.5 is an okay thing to do. But with that, we get about 30% shadowing, and we calculate our RA, which again, same, the vector confinement potential has a better agreement even with star data. So conclusion, we combine multiple different ingredients to put it together to form this non-perturbative transport, and where the transport coefficients are basically constrained with lattice, and there was no parameter tuning. All the coefficients were direct calculations, but constrained by lattice. And there are some effects that we have not included yet. One is the pre-equilibrium, the time between the the collision and the quark-gluon plasma formation. We find that effect to be sort of small for nuclear collisions, and we also want to include this event by event hydro, because currently our initial hydro is event averaged, and that can sort of explain this disagreement with CMS data potentially. But we're also still working on hadronic diffusion. And all these effects, we know that they're going to be sort of subleading, but eventually we will incorporate this. And that's all for my talk. Yeah. Thank you.
Question?
If I understand correctly, you have this vector correction that you took about. Will it benefit you if you get a spin-dependent potential exactly from the lattice instead of taking it from the T matrix? It may happen that the T matrix approach is not calculating that spin part accurately, so you have to compensate for it using this kind of a construction.
So the the potential is an input to the T matrix, and there is a spin-dependent term that was put in there. So
but that may not be sufficient.
So you're saying that like what Dibyendu showed, some potential like that we take an input into this. Yeah, that could definitely be.
The spin potential, you can put it from the lattice and then see what happens. Without using this kind of maybe without
parameterization, take directly from lattice. Yeah, that could definitely be. I will take that back to my advisor and I'll let you know what he says. Yeah.
We go back to your summary slide.
Yeah.
Have a kind of a big picture strategy question.
Right.
So it's a kind of a, let's say, deterministic calculation. You take the transport coefficients from lattice of all these ingredients that you discussed, and then you compare to experimental data. Pretty good. Yeah. Maybe could be a little better. Uncertainties. I talked about uncertainties earlier when asked.
Yeah, all of those are.
So what's the big picture? What's the ultimate goal of an exercise like this?
So the ultimate,
just to make the lines go through the data, or is there more?
No, it's well, it would be great if the lines go through the data, but
or not.
Yeah, we want to try to make sure that we put in as much like physics inputs as possible. without having any sort of parameter, try to reduce the parameter dependencies in the this thing. And we did that for the transport coefficients. There are still some parameters. I am not sure how the fragmentation part can be improved. I have to really think about that. Even in our hadronization, we still have some parameters that I am currently working on to get rid of, like the width of the this bright Wigner cross section. Yeah, and currently we are not. It's not a right thing to treat the D meson as a resonance when we know it's a bound state. And want to include hadronic diffusion as well, which is also like a major part of the transport, which we have not. So the main idea is that come up with a full physics-based with very minimal parameters to explain open heavy flavor observables, and to try to extract as much transport, like information about the transport coefficients as possible.
May I propose a slight variant?
Sure.
I think it'd be exceedingly interesting to take this framework and then set aside the lattice constrained transport coefficients.
Right.
And take this framework,
Do a Bayesian.
put it in a Bayesian inference
that's,
apparatus, and then let the data guide you to the values to a posterior distribution of the transport coefficients.
That's definitely.
And compared to lattice, you know, lattice is very good. You know, nature may have something else in mind, and this is the only way I think we will find it.
Yeah.
So maybe we can come back to that as I get to my Bayesian inference part tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I know Ralph well, and so I think it'd be interesting to collaborate within the, you know, bring your code within the Jetscape framework.
Yeah.
To actually put this in a Bayesian kind of apparatus.
Yeah. Stefan Bass has been a proponent of that. So yeah, we want to first like make sure that we have all the other, like all these sort of effects in control. Once that is there, then I think the Bayesian thing might be the next step to do. Yeah.
Okay, so I have another question.
Yeah.
So could you please explain that P tends to 0 for this charm coalescence probability, recombination probability to all hadron is 1. How do you ensure this?
Oh, so this is put by hand. This is put by hand. That like gives a normalization that we put in. That also is also sort of important to conserve charm number, but that's put by hand.
So that all hadron it will 1, and for each hadron also you fix comparing the experimental data?
No. So that comes out automatically. That comes out automatically with all the branching ratios and everything. There's only one thing from sort of experiment, you could say, which is the charm cross section, CC bar cross section, but every other like meson hadron comes directly from the model. So just this is how we calculate the recombination probability.
Okay, fine. And another comment. Okay, another comment. So Peter already asked. You have a extra energy loss term through the radiation along with the drag. So it will be really interesting to see how the peak is shifting. Maybe the width variance will not increase. You have the diffusion anyway. It will go. But how it is shifting, and let's say at t tends to infinity, how it will be. Any other question or comments? So if not, let them thanks for